Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bales.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast. I, as always, would like to start by following proper protocol by acknowledging the lands where we are today. And as you can see in the background is actually Meanjin, which is the city here in Brisbane. I want to acknowledge the Yuggera people south of the Mardawa River and also the Turrbal who are north of the Mardawa, aka the Brisbane River. We're here at PwC, and that's already kind of given it up in terms of who my guest is today. I'm joined by Tom Seymour, who, like with all of my guests, Tom, I'm going to throw it over to you to do your introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself. So we usually say who your mob is, where you come from, and then just a little bit about your family.
Thanks, Mundanara. It's great to be here. So I was born in Brisbane on Turrbal land, on north of the river. So I'm a Brizzy born and bred person. My mum and dad both grew up outside Brisbane in a little town, or outside a little town called Warwick. And they both moved to the city. They were the first in their families to move to the city at the time. They didn't know each other when they moved down. And my mum was a nurse.
So they were both from Warwick?
Well, they were different sort of. Dad was from Warwick. Mum was from Goondiwindi, which isn't far from Warwick.
Okay.
And Dad's father was a lawyer in Warwick. Mum grew up on a farm, but they both moved down to the big smoke. Mum was doing nursing and Dad was doing medicine. And as nurses and doctors do, they met and got married and ended up spending most of the time in Brizzy. Dad, though, spent 6 years living in London. When he finished his medical degree, went and worked in London as a doctor. So my older brother was born in Brisbane and my younger sister was born here. But I'm actually British, as you can tell from the accent. So I was born in London.
Wow.
And I lived there until I literally was born a year after Mum and Dad got there.
Yep.
Then we moved back to Brisbane. I was going into grade one. I was a little pommy kid back in Brizzy. But then lived in Brisbane all my life pretty much and travel lots for work now, but Brisbane is definitely home for me still.
So I'm going to ask you, in terms of growing up in Brisbane, what was it like?
Look, I loved it. I got really fond memories of growing up in Brisbane. We grew up at Aspley, which is on the north side of Brisbane. It was much more suburban back then. Like Brisbane's developed a lot and come along, as they say, since then. But I had awesome memories growing up as a kid, riding my push bike around the suburbs. For those of you, Brisbane, Aspley was on the outskirts of Brisbane at the time. Like, you know, all cities expand. We lived in a dead-end street. There was a bunch of kids similar ages. We used to get up to mischief and have fun. Growing up, and it was just an awesome time and memories growing up. And we'd go out to Mum's family was sort of moving in from the land by then, but we'd still go out a little bit out to the farm. Dad's family had come in by then, so it was awesome. And I still love Brisbane. I think it's the best city in Australia.
It definitely is. And even though I've moved now to the Sunshine Coast, in terms of your wife and your children, I met your beautiful wife.
Yes.
So if you're watching, a big hello, and I am going to come.
Yeah.
We were talking about a barbecue.
Yep.
At Hendra.
Get that organised.
Yep. I still remember it. So you're married, and have you got? Is it two boys? You got a boy?
No, I got. So I'm married. Danielle and I met each other at school. Effectively, we got to know each other at school, and we went out from pretty much the year after school on. So I've been childhood sweethearts, as they say, with my wife. Married 26 years now. Then we've got three kids. Camille, my eldest, who's 20. I'll get their ages right. They're for watching this. I better do this. Camille's 23, about to turn 24. Charlie, son, is 22, and Chloe, 20. So three kids, girl, boy, girl, yeah. Our youngest is actually living down the coast now at going to uni. The other two are, for some reason, don't want to move out. Life's pretty good at home.
Why would you want to move out?
That's right.
So tell me about your early days. University, did you go to uni here in Brisbane?
Yeah, I did. So when I finished school, I did accountancy at QUT.
Yeah.
I finished accountancy, and then I thought, I think I might want to do law. So I actually did law when I finished accountancy at Bond Uni down the coast. Yeah. So I did 2 different unis. Yeah. And then when I finished uni, I finished uni in end of 1993, and it was the recession Australia had to have, as Paul Keating said at the time. So getting a job out of uni was really hard, and I got offered a role at Coopers and Lybrand at the time at the Gold Coast. We used to have an office down there at the time. It was awesome. In the Gold Coast office, there were 30 people, and I was one of 4 blokes. There was 26 girls and 4 guys. So it was a bit atypical of the office back then. But it was fun. We had a great time. I worked there for about 4 years before I eventually came back to Brisbane. But it was an awesome office, small office, so you get to know everyone. Mainly working on a lot of big Japanese companies that were big property developers and building golf courses and hotels. Yeah. And then some other sort of local high net wealth sort of developers on the coast. You
had the legal and the accounting combined.
Yep.
Pretty good skills and quals to get out of uni and have both of them.
Yeah, it was good.
And how did that set you up for what you do today?
Look, it's funny, right? Like I reckon if you work with people you like in an industry that's got plenty of opportunity, I think I could have done pretty much anything. Like I didn't leave uni going, I always wanted, so I started in tax, right? So my profession coming through as a partner, I was in our tax practice. Yeah. And I loved it. I don't do a lot of practice anymore, obviously in my new role, but it's been an amazing career. But I could have started, I think, in audit. I would love that. I could have started in, technology. I think it's what you do and who you do it with. Yeah. And I got to work with amazing people and had a lot of fun doing it. And so I wasn't so much destined to do one thing or the other. I just sort of, you make the most of what's in front of you.
Of course. So I met you probably 2019. I'm just thinking of Garma.
Yep.
I remember going to Garma, and most people that have either listened or watched the special apps recently, we've got Garma 1, 2 and 3. So if you haven't, did you jump on my podcast? I'm just wondering.
No, you stood me up. I went looking for you. You weren't there.
And that's where we're here. We're making up for lost time. So Garma 2019,
yep.
PwC, Erin Woolford was working with PwC, yep. right? And Erin actually asked if I would come to Garma. And I said, I always wanted to go to Garma.
Yep.
So I remember turning up with all your mob, coming and camping. I don't camp, right? We camped as kids, and then it's not my ideal holiday, camping. Yep. Most people know that I probably wouldn't even survive glamping. So we turn up, we're camping, and you probably arrived on the second day.
Yep.
Because I remember I was yarning with people and we were meeting people, we had dinner. Then the next day you had turned up and it was at night time.
Yep.
I was standing in the line, and it wasn't a big fuss, but it was like, oh, look, Tom's coming, and I see a few of the staff or people were very excited that you're coming. So then I was told that there are some board, was you on a board?
Executive board members.
Executive board members that are also joining, even some of your junior Indigenous staff members.
Yep.
I remember the young girl, she was from Darwin.
Yes.
Yes, Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Is it Jasmine?
I saw Jasmine was up at Garma this year.
Yasmin.
No.
It's Is it Yasmin?
Jasmine.
Yeah. Sorry. Sis, we've met twice, but I still remember the fact that it was like she was rewarded actually to be rewarded to go to Garma and obviously to talk to people like yourself.
I think Yasmin's at Telstra now. I ran into her up there.
Yes, with Lauren.
Ago. Yeah.
All right. So it is Yasmin. So there was people like her that I was yarning with. So, I'm a little bit older than her and got kids, and she's still young and enjoying life, which is great. But to hear from her, just to hear directly from her how much it meant that she was recognised within your firm to have an opportunity to come to Garma and to be amongst people like yourself. So from conversations with people like her, I knew it was a big deal that, yous were turning up. There's another lady as well that was on your executive board. Forget her name.
Julie.
Yeah,
Julie
I remember
Coates.
Julie as well. So we're lining up, you turn up, and then I remember the next day we were sitting around the campfire, and then, because you'd flown in, you had your feed, you must have went straight to bed. I probably went to bed too. So to be there with you, Mob, the next day, we're sitting around the fire, and I remember you asking me, oh, so what do you do? And, there's people there that you'd probably met for the first time, and people like myself that weren't part of PwC or PIC. And I said, oh, look, I don't normally introduce myself like that. I usually, talk about where I'm from. And you're like, all right, well, tell us about yourself. And then I started telling you about I was from Redfern and growing up there with my sisters and my dad and, my story and my journey and how I got to, being in business, and we started yarning about BlackCard. Yep. And you literally said to me, I've never actually heard someone share their story, and you thanked me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, you tell me about you now. You were like, so you did. You started telling me about your family and your kids and everything. And it was a moment where, there's a lot of quiet time at Garma, and there's time to kind of engage and yarn and to process a lot of the topics and keynotes that are being delivered and the dancing, the performances, the concerts. There's so much going on. But there are those moments where you can just sit and kind of be. And I've never forgotten that yarn around the campfire. Fast forward, it's March 2020.
Yep.
And if we think about COVID, in terms of this global pandemic, it was March 2020 where everything for BlackCard completely come to a standstill. There was nowhere to go, no phones were ringing, and there wasn't even a plane. Well, there were still a few planes, but it started to look quite dim.
Yeah.
And I'm in Melbourne on a high, deliver this another session, and you were there.
Yeah.
And I sent you a photo, and you wrote an email back to me, and I was looking at the email before. And what you said in the email is you said to me, you said, Mandanara, you probably didn't know that just before your talk, the end of the CEO election, and it was quite brutal, you're saying, had been happening on the day where you introduced me onto the stage. And it was at 4:00 that afternoon that a decision was made that you then was basically announced as the new CEO. And so before that moment, you emailed me, because I've still got managing partner. So on your email signature, was you managing partner before you became CEO?
Yeah. So I was managing partner of financial advisory.
So I've got your last email as managing partner, and basically just saying to me, thank you for your talk. What you shared with us really mattered to me, especially for what I'm going through right now. And when you're in Brisbane, let's connect. And if you need some support, I would love to be part of your journey. About not even a month later, BlackCard definitely, for me, was winding up. I didn't see... COVID had hit. I honestly did not see any return from where we were in March to then April. A sister of mine, Erin, who was at PwC at the time, rang me and said, we just want to know how you are. Tom has asked how you are. What do you want me to say to him? And I said, well, look, I don't know what to do, and I don't even know what to say. I'm laying in bed and I don't even see myself getting out of bed. Then we spoke on the phone, but it was that conversation with yourself later on that day when you basically asked, how can we help you? And I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know how could BlackCard that delivers face-to-face training, I didn't know how we were even going to, the term for a while was pivot our business. So with your support, you ended up getting a team, and with Erin's support as well. And I had a comms person, a marketing person, I had a finance person, and someone wrote this letter and basically was asking for a lot of BlackCard's clients to support us. And we didn't stand one person down. We didn't have to lay anyone off. No one had reduced hours. They all had no work in the end, But it was that moment where meeting you around the fire then, picking up the phone and saying, how can I help you? I'll never forget the fact that it was one person and the organisation, the team that you gave BlackCard, that made sure that BlackCard didn't go under. Now, I know that there are thousands of businesses that haven't been able to bounce back, and there's no return. Our business ended up soaring.
Yep.
And I feel a little bit guilty because I know that 50% of Indigenous businesses in Victoria were shut, completely closed.
Yeah.
And I don't know the stats with mainstream organisations. We were one of the lucky ones. So business picked up. We started delivering on Zoom.
Yep.
We were already delivering training to PwC. Now that relationship has grown.
Yep.
What was it for you in terms of just thinking of, there would have been a lot of people that you're thinking of during that time of what can you do, how can you support not just your own colleagues, but businesses like BlackCard. I'm forever grateful, Tom, for the support that you have given us. But what was it for you at the time? Do you even remember?
Yeah. So a couple of things. There's a lot in all of that.
I know,
right?
there's a lot there.
There's a lot in all that. So let me go back before I come to that day we chatted on the phone after COVID had broken. We met in Garma, and you've got energy and passion about what you do and how you do it, and it's a topic that is really important to learn. So for me, I'm a massive believer. If you don't understand something, you're never going to want to change something for the better that you don't understand, right? So, and I think a lot of Australians just haven't had the privilege I've had to do things like to go to Garma, to meet someone like yourself, just to sit and listen like we did around the campfire and chat and hear your story, which is an awesome, inspiring story, right? It's an amazing story about courage, tenacity, leadership. It's a great Australian story, right? I'm a proud Australian, and you've got an amazing Australian story. So we'd had that experience. I don't know, you left one thing out. We sat next to each other at a dinner in Melbourne where you met Danielle, my wife.
Yes, I done the acknowledgement.
You did the acknowledgement of country, and
yes.
We chatted that night, and you met Danielle, and we got on, and so I met you there. And then the day I saw you in Melbourne, it had been a really stressful 3 or 4 weeks at work, right? I've been going through an election process for CEO here where everyone votes, and you got to stand up and present your case around the country, and it was sort of right at the height of the sort of pressure of that process. And I remember that lunch you spoke at, and I remember it really clearly because another partner who I'm really close to said to me after that lunch, he goes, I can't believe you just zoned out of all the pressure and the stress of work as if it didn't exist. And I was like, yeah, I actually did. I walked into that room really stressed and under pressure. And then I heard you present, and my mind went off everything else. And you said something that day, I still haven't forgotten it. It's probably one of the most impactful things I've heard someone say, and you'll probably go, oh yeah, but you were talking about your life on the block and growing up in Redfern. And you actually said something like when you got a job and you talked about the impact, and you said, don't underestimate how much a job changes a household for an Indigenous family, right? And having grown up in a really privileged family, I still remember that. It's one of the phrases that has stuck with me. And, to my team here around what we're doing around trying to support Indigenous programs, and I'm a massive believer in Uluru Statement from the Heart and constitutional recognition. But actually what I care more about is creating pathways for Indigenous Australians to get a job and have economic freedom and prosperity. And the way you said it and the natural sort of way you said it that day hit me really hard. So we had that experience where, I don't know, it was a great experience in Garma. We then had a really good night in Melbourne, chatting over dinner. I then saw you present, and I just believed in you, to be honest, going, wow, you've got this natural talent and ability. Then Garma, then we fast forward a couple of weeks. I'd obviously been, lucky enough to get the role here. But then COVID hits, right? And everyone's going, wow, the world.
So you became the CEO of PwC and then COVID hit at the
I think it was
same
like
time.
10 days before. I had 10 days before COVID hit. And I was sitting in Brisbane and I was sitting at home, and I think I spoke to you the first day I'd come into the office. And it was deserted in the office, and I was sitting in a room not far from where we're sitting now, and I chatted to Erin, and Erin is like another amazing person. I got a massive amount of time for her, and she's a powerhouse. And Erin and I chatted, and I was like, well, everyone's going to have to learn to adapt to doing things differently if we can't do things face to face. And you're a service organisation like ours, right? Like we're about quality of service and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's what makes our business tick. And you and I chatted, and it was easy to say, hey, you know what, I might have some spare people, because we'd gone off a cliff at the time. We had lots of people sitting around with time. We'll help you out. And to see you go from strength to strength since then's just been awesome. And I've got to say, I was at a dinner in Melbourne 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was at dinner with Patrick Wright, who's a really senior exec at NAB.
Yeah.
And we were chatting away, and for some reason we were talking about things around impact and you can make in the community. And he said, oh, I've met this person. She's amazing, and she did this cultural awareness training with my team, and I want to do more around that. And I was like, oh, no way. And he goes, and it was Mandana. So he and I then sat in a restaurant in Melbourne in Little Collins Street chatting about how awesome you and your business is for half an hour. So I don't reckon we did much. I think, you've kind of, I look at what you've achieved for your business, the team that works for you, and then the sort of importance of what you're doing. It's awesome. And just it's exciting to be part of, to be honest.
These are opportunities, right? You saw an opportunity. It wasn't even an opportunity at the time. You saw a need. Let's check on people like me or BlackCard that we were already doing business with each other.
Yep.
Luke at the time had committed for every single partner to do 1 hour BlackCard.
Yep.
So they were flying me to do 100 partners at a time. So it wasn't exactly a workshop. It was just a kind of intimate moment or opportunity to have a yarn with me, and for me to kind of embed some really important principles around Aboriginal knowledge and Aboriginal language
country,
just in communicating styles, talking about the acknowledgement, just some really, I'm not even going to call it basic knowledge because it's quite high level. So that was a commitment for me. So we're already doing business. But afterwards, you've launched your Elevate Wrap.
Yep.
Right, that was a big deal. You've launched your Elevate Wrap, and then there was more buy-in with PwC to get more people trained in BlackCard, and you've continued to invest in BlackCard, and now it's 90 minutes for every partner, and it's mandatory that every partner does BlackCard training, and everyone else has access to the 3-hour program. I'm just thinking when I go back to Patrick, I was in an Airbnb at Daylesford in Victoria, had no idea where Daylesford was, with Ross, the CEO of NAB.
Yep, Ross McEwen,
So the first workshop for NAB was Ross, the CEO, and his direct report. So Patrick was part of that, wasn't it?
Yep, he was.
The first cohorts, that was just recently. So they've also, NAB were the first Elevate partners, and they're now talking to Reconciliation Australia about their 5th Elevate Reconciliation Action Plan. PwC and PIC, which is PwC Indigenous Consulting, have a joint Elevate Wrap.
Yep.
Where are you at that? Are you nearly finished? Are you going on to your second one?
I think we're just gone through to our second one.
Yes, because the first one was back in 2019, 2020.
Correct. Yep.
Erin was rolling it out.
Yep.
I was brought in to do some of the training, and it's just taken off. I haven't even looked at the wrap since then, but I know that you were one of the first organisations to commit to the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Yep.
And I remember coming down to Sydney, and a few of the questions from the PwC people were trying to understand the Statement from the Heart. Also, in your Elevate Wrap, there's, the PwC Murra,
Yep.
the Boost Award,
Yep.
which we actually won. And there was no bias here.
I think you were the first winner,
Kim,
or a joint winner.
We were the joint winners. So Kylie Bradford from Kakadu Tiny Tots.
Yep.
It's interesting because Kakadu Tiny Tots and BlackCard both won the $30,000 Boost Awards. And Kim Cheetah, big shout out. Is he still with you, Mop?
No, Kim retired earlier this year. Kim's wife's a member for Parliament now.
Oh, there you go.
She won the seat in South Australia. I can't remember what it's called now, the seat. But yeah, so.
Another big supporter for Aboriginal people and businesses. Kim was the sponsor for this?
He was the lead partner sponsoring the program, yeah.
And the decision came back to basically Kim is like, we've got two people here. What do we do? Do we split the $30,000 down the middle? We've never had two. We've always been able to pick one winner easily. Yep. And Kim said, you know what? Let's give them both the $30,000 support. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. That $30,000 we were able to reinvest it back in, obviously, PwC services to support BlackCard. And we did this financial forecasting and this whole lot of work with two of your top finance tax people.
Yep.
And then when IBA and the Queensland government were offering those loans to support businesses, having that all done for us
it made it
through so much red tape.
Yeah.
So we got the support, we won the award. But I just wanted to ask you really quickly, in terms of the Indigenous business sector, I honestly believe that, there's many ways to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty.
Yep.
And you're also doing a lot around homelessness.
Yep.
To, end homelessness, which is amazing. In terms of Indigenous businesses, what have you seen, even in the short amount of time that you've been the CEO?
Look, I think it's going to be the big space where you're going to see huge progress made that's going to benefit Indigenous Australians more than anything else. So as good as Uluru Statement from the Heart will be, Canberra doesn't actually drive our lives. We drive our lives, right? And that ability for Indigenous Australians to create, build and grow sustainable businesses into the future. It creates jobs. It creates wealth, intergenerational wealth, which Indigenous Australians should deserve to benefit from as much as anyone else. And the reason I'm passionate about that, probably more than anything else in this space, is if you think about what PwC does really well, we help our clients succeed. That's kind of what we're here to do. So we work for businesses, from everyone from the biggest multinationals on the planet to small businesses to help them succeed. So if we put the power of what we're good at, that's what we're good at, right? We're not experts in the Constitution. We're not experts in how you kind of operate in certain spheres, but we are really good at helping clients succeed, and we want to help more Indigenous businesses grow and be successful. And I have a really strong belief that we've got a massive opportunity to do that. Our people also love doing it. They love working with you.
Yeah.
They love working with Indigenous businesses and seeing that sort of success. And I look at agriculture, aquaculture, tourism, energy, all of these growth sectors of the future are going to really play well into Indigenous businesses in Australia into the future. And also, I think there's a real thirst in Australia for people to learn about the culture.
Yeah.
And, giving people that opportunity to learn when, that's why BlackCard's been so good for our business, right? Our people love doing it. They love learning. We have about 10,000 people. Their average age is in the mid-20s. Heaps of people have come from overseas, are first and second generation Australians, and they haven't had the opportunity to learn about Indigenous culture. And when they do, it's an amazing culture to learn about, and then they want to make a bit of a difference, and it's exciting to have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And it's great for our business.
And I was just going to say, in terms of Lisa Main, I'm pretty sure her name is Lisa Main. Lisa was in your comms, and quite high up. It was Lisa that supported Black Magic Woman podcast when we were just an idea starting to record, because there was nothing going on with BlackCard. Memories coming back now. That's when Black Magic Woman was born. And then we had a whole comms and marketing and pitch documents, all again from PwC. So not only did we get the support for BlackCard to kind of bounce back, we then got another lot of support because there was nothing going on at the moment with BlackCard. So we kind of went, all right, well, let's do this podcast. The podcast ended up taking off. IBA have got a partnership with us. Monash Uni have just signed a partnership with us. So now the podcast is actually making money. So in terms of, I've got a podcast, I've got opportunities now to use my platform to amplify, you know, in particular First Nations voices, but people like yourself as well. People that are doing amazing things in this country and in organisations like PwC. Matty Ricks is a brother of mine.
I was with Matt just before.
Well, there you go. Matty Ricks is heading up the First Nations recruitment and looking at that pathway and pipeline of talent and bringing them in here, and also Danielle Dixon. So there's amazing, and there's AT, and there's too many people to name. But all of the amazing people that we've been able to engage with and build relationships. Like if I saw, Daniela on the street, and I've seen her a couple of times, just from being on Zoom and then delivering these sessions, there really is something about people that work at PwC that's quite special. And a lot of our facilitators say, after every workshop that we deliver, how deadly the mob was. And the workshops, around delivering culture capability can go one way or the other, right? But we've never had anyone in the PwC sessions that have said something that has kind of, made people feel a little bit uncomfortable. Otherwise, I would have rang you. I would have
heard about it. But, our people love to learn. They're curious. We hire brilliant, smart people, right? They're awesome. And kind of the trait of they want to learn and be curious. That's how you kind of expand your mind. And I think that's why they love doing. Yeah,
you can tell. They're so into it. Yeah. They're open-minded. They're engaged. They've done their preparation. They are like all over it. Not everyone has time to do prep and then jump online for 3 hours. That's already an ask, a big ask. Yeah. But the people at PwC are amazing, and the relationships that we've made beyond the sessions are relationships that I'll cherish forever. I just want to say before we wrap up, especially for a lot of our big organisations in Australia, whether you're a bank or whether you're a professional services firm, accounting firm, or even for small businesses, we make up 0.06% of the Australian businesses in terms of the Indigenous business sector. 0.06%. What can mainstream organisations, doesn't matter who they are, what they do, what's some advice for them that they haven't got a reconciliation action plan? They don't have, or they may have Indigenous staff that work for them, but they're probably not aware of that at the moment. What's some advice that you would give them?
Look, I think first of all is giving your teams an opportunity to learn more about Australian Indigenous history. People like it. They got a thirst for it, right? They want to understand more, and never more than at the moment, because there's a national conversation now going on around a referendum, and that's going to kind of build momentum, presumably over the year or two ahead. I think I haven't met any Australian who is proud of the disadvantage that Indigenous Australians face today, whether that's around the justice system, the health system, the healthcare system, like across the education. So everyone kind of knows we can do so much better. So let your teams have the opportunity to learn more about it, and then you'll see where the energy comes. That's my big belief. Like, if you had to come in and run BlackCard training, we're the ultimate free market economy, our team's here. If no one wants to show up and I couldn't get people to come to your training sessions, I'd say to you, hey, you've got to change what you're doing. But it's the opposite, right? Everyone's sort of fighting to get on.
The first 20 sessions that you're locked in, I'm not joking, and AT, you can attest, and Daniela, the first 20 sessions were booked out within a couple of weeks.
Because you do a great job, but people want to learn and they want to understand more. Because I kept coming back to, if you don't understand something, you can't solve it. You can't even want to change it.
Yep.
If you don't understand, if you don't know something exists, then of course you're not going to want to change it.
Yep.
But once you start to learn about it and you stop and you think, which is what we got to do up at Garma, and you just chat away, you go, I want to do something different about this. So I think just awareness, it's an amazing culture. It's an amazing history. Once you start to learn about it, then you can work out how you will best fit. And for us, that was doing what we're good at, helping businesses. For other organisations, it'll be totally different. But just kind of give yourself the opportunity to learn about it would be the first bit I'd start at.
And before we wrap up, I've got to say really quickly, the last time we spoke actually, was I rang you and I said, Tom, we've got some stuff happening in my community in Redfern.
Yep.
And I don't know what we're going to do. We don't even know, what the future looks like. And you said, let's do a Zoom. And we jumped on. Gavin Brown, big shout out to Gav, who I met at the airport coming back from Garma.
Yep.
Seen him at the airport and I had to go, I said, Braz, we don't know each other. He's like, oh, well, we do. But I said, we never met in person.
Yep.
Finally got to meet Gav Brown.
Surprised by that. Yeah.
I know. And, would think about how busy he is and I am. But Sister Marg Homono, the CEO of Redfern Youth Connect, thanked me when I was in Redfern the other day. She said to me, Sis, Gavin has been amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely love working with him, yarning with him, and the support that we're getting from PIC. So big shout out to you, Gav. And Tom, the fact that I could just pick up the phone and say, look, I don't know if you can help us, but I'm reaching out anyways. And if you can give us some time, let's have a yarn. And if we can, we can.
Yeah.
And now we've got an organisation like Redfern Youth Connect having, the resources. We're having the future, but they've got resources at their hands now that they didn't have, a couple of weeks ago.
I just want to call out Gav. So Gav's CEO of PwC Indigenous Consulting. We go back to where we can make a big difference. Like Gav's grown PwC Indigenous Consulting 200% in 1 year. We've got 5 partners now. I want that to be after BlackCard, maybe, but no, the biggest, most successful Indigenous consulting business. They got awesome people.
Gav, we could partner.
We should be. So, a massive call out to Gav because he did show up, and Norm went on behalf of Gav, who's another PIC partner, to that meeting. And, to see that outcome end well, when you knew 2 federal ministers showed up, you figured they were not going to show up and give you bad news. But to see that end well, it's awesome.
What I want to say is that you actually said to Margaret, if you need to let her know that you've got the support from PwC, and if you want to tell them who's supporting you, you can mention my name. Not many people would do that, right? Stay in the back. There's a lot of other people that are supporting, that stay in the back, would rather not have their names out there.
Yeah.
You was not afraid to say, let them know that I'm supporting you. So, that was amazing.
Yeah, look, I think you rang me. One, I trust you and we know each other. So, again, it comes back to relationships, right? I know if you're asking, there's going to be a good reason for it. So, you kind of feel confident. But the amazing thing about a place like PwC is within... I hung up from you and I was actually in a cab going to a client meeting in North Sydney. I was in Sydney that day and on the phone in the cab I rang Gav. Gav then said, hey, there's a partner in Melbourne who's on the board of I won't name all the agencies. There's a partner on the board of the federal agency, so I rang her. She said, yep, the whole thing's a total sort of stuff up. They're going to have to fix it. So within 2 or 3 phone calls, we could kind of connect to go, okay, well, who do we get there? What do we got to do? It was awesome to see, and I know how much it meant to you. Having, again, kind of back to the story you and I chatted about when we first met in Garma about where you grew up, and I knew it meant a lot to you, and it got sorted, and hopefully it gets better from here. So, it's a good story.
And that's one of many stories, and I just want to say in terms of for any corporates or organisations, especially if you've got a reconciliation action plan and you've been thinking about business and employment opportunities, go above and beyond. Think outside the box. who are the Indigenous businesses that are in your community where you're operating, whether it's Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne, if you've got a national footprint, go and build those relationships and ask people on the ground, how can you best support them? Because it's not always about employment.
Yeah.
You know, my organisation, I might just need, or, you know, the role that I play in my community, more importantly, is I need to build these relationships to be able to say to people like Margaret Redfern Youth Connect, I can yarn to someone about auditing. You know, they needed some pro bono work.
Yeah.
And I can ring someone like PwC. So these relationships are really important. But for organisations that haven't really got their foot in the door yet, they haven't really kind of got their heads around the whole reconciliation or the RAPs and stuff, please reach out. If it's not to PwC, you can reach out to us at BlackCard and actually ask the question, you know, where is our support or our resources or our people? Where could we, you know, where can we work? How can we support you? I hate the word help because we're not all victims and we don't all need help. But there are a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of synergies between us where if we work together, we can actually achieve more together. Whereas on our own, there's a lot of struggle. And it's sometimes an uphill battle for organisations, especially Aboriginal businesses that are trying to get off the ground.
Yeah, and it's partnership. It's not help, like, you know.
Yeah, don't see it as...
We help, like, you know, the help partner with... We work with the biggest companies in the world with more resources, more money and more power than any companies on the planet. Like, you know, with them, it's about bringing skills together. And what I would say to the Indigenous businesses out there, never be afraid to pick up the phone and say, hey, you know what, I got this business idea, you know, let's work together on something. Because I actually think there is a real thirst in organisations like ours. It's not just PwC, it's our competitors, it's the banks, it's the energy companies, the mining companies. There's actually a real thirst to actually achieve something. And sometimes when you're sitting in our seat, you kind of want to do it, but you're busy and you don't see the opportunity. So when the opportunity comes along, it's actually really exciting. And, you know, as I said, to be sitting in that restaurant in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago and hear about the fact that you're owning it out at, you know, NAB now, it's awesome. You sit there and you go, how good's that? And I've got no doubt you're going to continue to do that. So it's very cool or deadly.
It is deadly. Look, on that note, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I am aware that sun
is going down.
I don't know if you're feeling a bit sunburnt, but it's beautiful. We've got an absolutely beautiful day here in Brisbane. But I just want to say, you know, to have you for an hour, Tom, I know you're really busy, and for you to be in Brisbane and me to be in Brisbane at the same time,
rare.
Right? The universe has aligned. But I just want to say thank you for being part of my podcast. But more importantly, thank you for your commitment, you know, in supporting First Nations peoples and closing the gap with having your Elevate RAP and even bringing someone like Maddie Ricks into the business that hopefully is going to build that pipeline of Indigenous talent. So thank you. And
thank you.
I hope, you know, soon I'll come over, we'll do the barbecue. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, we'll get that organised.
On that note, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and thanks again for jumping on the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks, Mandadara.
You're welcome. I know I say this after every single yarn that I have with people on the podcast. How deadly was that? If you're watching or you're listening to this podcast, I never thought in a million years that I'd actually be sitting here having a yarn with Tom Seymour, who I talk about most days at BlackCard. And you heard it, you know, in terms of the support and the relationship that I've built with Tom and also, you know, other mob. Now, the relationship that I've built with Tom and also the people at PwC that he's introduced me to. He's an amazing man and a great person to know. And I really want people to reach out especially if there are any First Nations people that are thinking about going into business or may need a little bit more support. If Tom can't support you, I'm pretty sure I might be able to point you in the right direction. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye for now.
Don't forget to follow Black Magic Woman Podcast on all social media platforms. To keep up to date with the latest episodes and news, head to blackmagicwoman.com.au. You can rate and review the podcast on iTunes, and please feel free to share the podcast with your family and friends.